pregnant. So you need to know. But a lot of people that eat and get consequences from it, they have what we call harmful use. And that's not really an addiction. Addiction is
What do you do if you have a food addiction, if you have a sugar addiction? Or you can start by listening to this interview. I'm here again with Bitten Jonsson, who's a registered nurse and an addiction specialist. We spoke briefly before about what a sugar addiction or a food addiction is. Yeah. And now we're going to talk about what to do about it if you have that sort of problem. So what do you do if you have a food addiction, if you have a sugar addiction?
Well, the best scenario is that you go to a professional that is trained in sugar and food addiction that can help you to see if you really are an addict or not, so that you get help to understand if you have the disease. A lot of people tell me I'm a little bit sugar addicted, and I used to say you can't really be a little bit addicted. You can't be a little bit pregnant. So you need to know. But a lot of people that eat and get consequences from it, they have what we call harmful use, and that's not really an addiction. Addiction is obsession. Addiction is very, very strong obsession with the food, and you can't stop eating. So what you do, first of all, get knowledge, learn about it. Get somebody telling you about the brain, the reptilian brain, the reward system, how those affect the rest of your brain. So the prefrontal cortex, for instance, where self-discipline is, gets very affected from addiction. So people think that they're a very bad character, or why don't I have any self-discipline with food? I have a lot of self-discipline at work or so. So you need to learn about that, so you understand that you're not a bad person. You have an illness, you have a biochemistry imbalance in your brain, and you need help.
Where can you learn about that? Is it anywhere online or
Today
any good books?
There is online, classes online. There are 12-step groups, Food Addicts Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous. There are other food-oriented groups. There are books you can read.
What would you recommend as a first book?
In English, I would recommend you to go to the Food Addiction Institute. There is a new book out by a Canadian doctor called Vera Tarman. Her book, Food Junkies, is a very good book to start with. And also to Google, on food addiction. You get a lot of interesting screenings up. You could check yourself, do I have this? So once you start doing that, you need to understand your brain. I used to joke and say that it's like, you have always been driving a tractor, and now you're going to drive a Ferrari. If you don't know how to drive a Ferrari, you're going to crash, I promise you. That's a heavy-duty car to drive. So you need to learn about your Ferrari brain. And you need to know a lot about nutrition and food. Because a lot of people think that, I just quit chocolate, and then they eat a lot of bread or pasta. You need to understand what food does with your body and your brain, which foods act as a psychoactive drug. So you need to learn how to eat.
So in brief, what kind of foods should you try to avoid?
Well, most carbs. And since when you look at some of my patients, some can have a little bit of fruit now and then. Some cannot have any fruit, because we talk about trigger foods, and we are biochemically unique, each one of us. So I, for instance, can eat a banana, but I can't eat apples. I trigger on apples. And some think that's psychological, but it isn't. It's biochemistry. It's how your body reacts on the food. So what you should eat is like low carb, high fat, plain food. That's most important. No chemical additives in the food.
Not like processed foods?
Processed foods?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, exactly.
Not any processed foods. And food additives plays havoc with your biochemistry. So that will actually trigger a food addict to eat more, like monosodium glutamate. That's very dangerous. It acts as a sugar in our body, so it triggers us to eat. And a food addict has cravings, and a normal person has hunger and appetite for things, but we have a craving, and that's an obsession. So once that is triggered by sight, you see the food, smell, chocolate cake, bread, that triggers our craving. And once the craving is on, that's like a pain attack in a person with pain. So it's really painful, and you can't think of anything else. So you need to learn about craving, you need to learn about craving management, and we have lots of different ways to help people, to not get into the craving mode. Because we used to joke and say, once you're in the craving mode, tie me down to a chair and or lock me up in a room, because you're going to go and get the food.
It's really hard once you're in that.
Once you get the craving going, it's very hard to treat it. So you need to have that help. You need to learn a lot about the brain, learn about the food. But the most important thing, I think, because I think as a doctor, that I'm sure you have met people that have tried Weight Watchers, 5-2, GI, low carb, powder, pills, and everything works for a short time. If you really get into it, people can be motivated for 3 to 6 weeks or maybe 3 months, but then you fall back.
Why?
Because if you don't understand that you're an addict and you start trying to eat normal after a period again, or somebody comes by you with a bun and say, hi, do you want a bun? And you see it and you smell it, that's going to cause that craving. If you're not prepared and you haven't really the knowledge inside of you to stay away from it, or to use a lot of techniques, thinking, feeling, and acting techniques that we train people in, which we call relapse prevention, you're going to fall. And
so
then
you're
you have to
saying
start
that
all over.
if you're an addict, you should never ever eat.
No, you can't give a heroinist a little bit heroin on Saturday.
Right, or an
promise
alcoholic.
No.
You can never have
It's
a drink
not
ever.
No, because the brain chemistry was there from the beginning. And if you take away the drug, you still have the same brain chemistry. So if you put the drug back in, it starts all over. So you have to learn what kind of foods are psychoactive to my body.
And then
And for some of my patients, absolutely. But you see, you can't think in that way. You can never say that to an addict. You can never, ever have chocolate again. So that's why we work with things like, it's only for today. When you diet, you say, okay, today I fell, so I'm going to start on Monday or after vacation or next week or New Year's Day or something. You always postpone it. So one of the most efficient tools that I tell my clients is to say, today, only for today, whatever happens, I'm not going to pick up the drug, but it's only for today. I might do it tomorrow.
Right.
So when my
absolutely no chocolate today.
No. So when my addicted brain see the chocolate and say, oh, I want chocolate, I can say to myself, yeah, it looks good. We can eat it tomorrow, but not today.
And then tomorrow you say
exactly the same, Andreas. That's a trick. So that's how you do. You are drug-free one day at a time for weeks, months, years, and so on. And that's how alcoholics do. That's how drug addicts do, pill addicts. Anyone that has an addiction and has gotten the right treatment, the right knowledge, will use the 24-hour rule, only for today.